In the grey light of a chill November day, Geoffrey Key climbs the stairs to his attic studio. He crosses the floor and sits at a chair before a blank canvas perched on an easel. He stares at the canvas, then selects a brush and dips it in a pot of brown liquid. Reaching forwards, he begins a series of rapid but sure strokes. And that is where the magic begins. Geoffrey Key's career as a professional artist spans over 60 years. In this film, Geoffrey takes us on a journey to the locations that inspired his work and talks in depth and intimately about the places, people and experiences which have made him the artist he has become. The story begins, like many other good stories, over a bottle of wine in a central Manchester restaurant.
Oh, bless you. Thank you very much. That looks lovely. I do not have to project my voice. Art has always been at the forefront. So I've gone through life with blinkers on, really.
Were there sort of any particular influences? Were there things that you saw and thought, I want to do that? Or
I've always tried in my life to do an honest picture, and I've never really relied on somebody else. My mother used to take me to the various art galleries in Manchester, and there was one painting actually in the City Art Gallery, and I cannot remember the name of the artist. It's a huge picture of a chariot race, and it's only a few years ago that I realised that this chariot race had been implanted, and I think that accounts for a lot of the equestrian pictures that I've done, because everything comes from something seen, you know. But it can become somewhat cancerous, if that's the right word. You know, you can be painting and you find yourself doing a little trick that you've seen somewhere else.
Geoffrey Key was born in 1941 in a war-torn Manchester. His mother Marion was a talented amateur artist, and he vividly recalls amongst his early memories his sense of joy at the smell of paint being mixed in the kitchen of his childhood home.
The person who was pointing me in the right direction all the time was my mother, because she was a frustrated artist. When she was young, she couldn't afford to go to art college, because then you had to pay. So she used to take me into Platfields Park, sketching.
She sketched with you?
She did indeed. She did watercolours.
Geoffrey's mother Marion was the most important thing in his life at the time, and the first significant influence in his development as a young artist.
A lot of the early pictures I did, that was quite prominent at Platt Church, which is it's all terracotta.
A key feature of Platfields Park was the local church, and Geoffrey recalls that after a summer shower, its terracotta spire would sparkle in the summer sun.
It's fantastic. It's the appear almost as though the thing was covered in gold leaf. It was absolutely stunning. Very different now. Very different now.
It was perhaps these trips to Platt Fields that instilled in Geoffrey the desire to become an artist.
She was really sort of the most important thing in my life at that time. I mean, she used to bring me to sketching here because the house where we lived is only about 500 yards across the way there. And I also, at that time, got quite an interest in wildfowl because of the lake.
Oh, we could stand up in turn.
That's it. I'm sorry, it was the thespian coming out.
Oh, did you used to be a thespian? Did you?
It's Lidl there. Finding yourself is very difficult. Now, when I was at college, I was totally influenced by Harry Rutherford, who was one of my tutors. And when I left college, I was doing these very dark, tonal pictures, which I was pleased with, but it wasn't totally me. So I concentrated on spending, well, I didn't time it, but it turned out to be roughly a year, painting this one hill in Glossop called the Nab. From that, it did burn off this influence, and I ended up with pretty close to what I wanted for myself. From where I lived in Glossop, it looked like a vertical shape, and either side of that was small villages, copses of trees. I lived over on the far side there, looking across at the hill, and that huge scoop became almost like a silhouette against the sky, and then in front of this was sort of small copse of trees and bushes and what have you. And they did metamorphosize into sort of figures, and that's when the figures crept in.
Geoffrey's repeated painting of the Nab brought about a remarkable metamorphosis, not only in the style of his painting, but also in the Nab itself.
These abstracted forms eventually morphed into figures, interlocking figures to begin with, and then they became separate entities. And that's how all my figure painting basically started.
Geoffrey abstracted the natural formations of the Nab into horizontal and curved shapes. But perhaps the most prominent development in the feature was the emergence of the strong horizontal line, a feature which is remarked upon in his later work.
At that point I hadn't noticed I was doing that, but that really is it's harking back to the Nab.
So the ghost of the Nab
it's there.
can be discerned in the later stuff.
Yeah, it's still with me, whether I like it or not.
But in Geoffrey's subconscious, it wasn't only the Nab figures that emerged from his landscapes.
One day, I was working on landscape at the time, and I was just doodling, and I wasn't actually thinking about what I was doing. And then I sort of looked at the paper, and I'd done a series of clown heads, and I thought, God, where's it? And then I remembered all these past memories of clowns and what have you, and where I used to hide behind the seat when I went to the circus when the clowns came on. There was the Jester series, then the Clown series, and then the Commedia dell'arte series. And all three have got the same thing in common. It's happiness, it's humour, it's fun. I'd reached roughly the end of the series, and I did this Piero holding, well, not holding, but releasing a blackbird. With my fear of clowns when I was a child, because that's the whole reason why I painted them, it was as though that was sort of the cure. I'd taken all that fear away and just released the black bird.
So the thing that talks about joy actually starts with fear.
Yes. But I've always liked the light things in life, not the heavy, you know. When Judith was still alive, bless her, she became an incredibly important element in my life. Judith and I, we were like Siamese twins, you know. We worked together as a team, and she sort of did the promotion side of my work in a very sensitive fashion. And I say the books she produced are superb, and I miss her sort of. Well, I miss her. I never paint direct from life. I've said this many times to people. It's the only way I can say it. It's like if I do a still life and I set up a group of objects, I look at it for a period of time and then put those objects away and then paint it. And it's based on a distilled memory where the mind has got a fantastic way of simplifying the construction of things. Honestly, when I'm tackling something like a horse picture, I don't actually physically sort of or mentally think of the colours involved. I put down what I feel is right.
Geoffrey continues each day to climb the stairs to his attic studio, where he sits in front of an easel and paints something new. Geoffrey believes inspiration flows through work, not the other way around. And after 60 years, the inspiration continues to grow. And I suppose that's helped you to be what you are, which is to paint what at that moment interests you and not be affected by market or social mores or anything.
Well, I've never been affected by the market. I was affected originally by education because I started life off after leaving college as a teacher. It reached a point where something had to go. It was either teaching or painting. and being completely and utterly selfish, I chose painting. And it's just gone on ever since. That was in the 70s, you know.
And 60 years on, you're still
I'm
pushing
still,
new boundaries.
I'm still pushing. Set to it. And, I mean, there's a white bird.
Yeah, I was going to say.
But it's actually based on my little hen blackbird that visits me every morning. I know it sounds stupid, but I feed it cheese and it may have followed me.
Prehistoric societies, it would be a spirit bird.
That's it. But anyway, to my white blackbird.